Welcome to the show. It's the 28th of June 2021, and these are a bunch of stories that you might have missed or that I find interesting or that I think you might find interesting. And we're going to start with the New South Wales, Australia ban on religious symbols in New South Wales state schools. Now, last Friday was the last day for feedback on this ban. Is it on everything? No, it's on the kirpan. A kirpan is a ceremonial dagger, and it's one of 5 symbols required to be carried by baptized Sikhs. It symbolizes a Sikh's duty to defend themselves or aid those in peril. Now, unlike the hijab or the Star of David, in that religion, this isn't optional. This doesn't come out of nowhere though. On May 6, a 14-year-old boy stabbed a 16-year-old boy with a kirpan in Glenwood High School in New South Wales. Now, this was just a temporary ban, and it's on any knife in a state school while the Education Department reconsiders its current legislation. Now, that current legislation says that while knives are usually banned, exceptions exist for sport or food or religious purposes in a public place or school. And this was to Gladys's surprise. She didn't know. What's to be proposed is not unlike decisions made in other countries with similar debates. In Britain, most schools ask students to bring small symbolic daggers about 4 centimeters long that are fully enclosed and sheathed in a way they can't be drawn. Now, what's being considered, the thing that we had to get feedback on in this state, proposes that the kirpan be a blade 8 centimeters or less, 16.5 combined with the handle, concealed, safely stored or secured against the body during sport or physical activity. Now, the proposal notes that means wrapped in sturdy fabric or secured within a sports band or leather belt that ensures it cannot slip out or cause injury to the wearer or another person. And lastly, that it be blunt and unusable, meaning the blade is restricted in its sheath. While Canada has made identical policy decisions, they skipped that last one. On May 19th, the World Sikh Organization of Canada wrote to Gladys and the State Education Minister, Sarah Mitchell, to point out that this proposes fundamental changes to the nature of the kirpan, and while agreements have included limits on size or required that the kirpan be worn underneath the clothes, no attempt to alter or regulate the shape or attributes of the kirpan has ever been accepted by Sikhs. This, of course, caught the attention of local rapper Fresh the Lion, who took to social media to bring light to the proposals. And it's fairly obvious why a kirpan would be controversial in a school, but the Sikh community were quick to point out that kirpans aren't weapons. The chairman of the Australian Sikh Association raised a fair point that a kirpan is not unlike a compass in a school bag, a fork, or a knife. Banning this would not help anything other than cause more issues in the community. Australia is a largely Catholic country, and the reason this story matters, the reason I'm bringing it to you, is that the exception of knives as a religious symbol in our schools is a country making a choice to allow secularism in its schools. It allows for students, it allows for a space where religion is one of many options. And in this review, in this state at least, we're at a bit of a turning point where we are could start turning down a road that ends with state secularism. For example, banning, say, crucifixes. And that's not unlike France, who in 2004 banned all religious symbols from state schools. When I was in primary school, I know this is anecdotal, but one idiot stabbed another idiot in the arm with a pair of scissors, and there was really no debate or no discussion about the carrying of scissors. We just went on, 800 kids carrying their own pair of scissors in their bags. I mean, scissors are just 2 knives on an axle together. I mean, I had a pair that could cut through paper clips. I worry that this is only a debate because kirpans are pretty and they don't serve a practical function, which white people can't get their heads around, but I don't think this is really an issue of a knife in a playground. I think the concern, the worry, should be the boy with the knife. I know it's a faux pas to call a kirpan a knife, but in this context, I am calling it a knife in the eyes of the New South Wales State Department. In addressing the bullying component of this, Amar Singh, the president of Turbans for Australia, said that if he had picked up a brick or a pencil, do we ban bricks and pencils? You could smuggle anything into your school if you wanted to. Now, those arguments aren't at all new. You've probably heard them before. They're almost expected at this point. But these recommendations, if they just get rid of the modification of the kirpan and just let you hold it in a sheath, then maybe we can find a happy compromise. But this highlights a bit of a discrimination, which I think will only wind up hurting religious freedoms in schools, especially just over one incident, and especially if you don't wind up blunting down stationary scissors at the same time. That's all I have on that. If you have any comments, I'm happy to hear your thoughts on that. And in news that can be seen as just another notch in Hong Kong's loss of autonomy to China, pro-democracy Hong Kong newspaper, the Apple Daily, put out its last issue on Thursday. They cited the safety of its staff. Now, this follows the founder, Jimmy Lai. He's spent almost a year in jail on national security charges. 7 executives and editors of the newspaper are also in jail on similar charges. This is in addition to the company's assets had been frozen on allegations they had colluded with foreign forces. Hundreds of police had raided the newspaper's newsroom twice in 12 months. Their crime? Writing editorials arguing for sanctions to be imposed on Hong Kong as the journalists witnessed the end of freedom of speech in their global city. For Jimmy Lai, Hong Kong authorities say he colluded with foreign powers to impose hostile measures against Hong Kong as China implemented sweeping national security laws that have been condemned by Europe, the United States, and Australia. The Sydney Morning Herald wrote that up to 10% of reporters in some divisions had resigned since Lai's arrest, and the reaction response has been in support of the newspaper. Exiled to Australia, Hong Kong legislator Ted Hui said that if we lose Apple Daily, it's a big message, a big symbol that we've lost it all already. And in a show of national solidarity, and just in case you don't get the picture of how much of a big impact this is to the people, on Thursday, Hong Kong's Apple Daily printed 1 million copies of its final newspaper, 10 times what it would normally sell in a day. From 1 a.m, customers queued around the block in Mong Kok and across the city to get their hands on a copy as soon as it was delivered to newsagents. And here you can see people chanting and waving smartphone flashlights outside the paper's headquarters late on Wednesday. And just as a recap of the Hong Kong situation, in April 2019, protests broke out across the country. 2 million protesters, that's a quarter of the population, and they were fighting against a law to allow suspected criminals, and I use quotation suspected criminals because really it was just a law seen that would allow anybody to be arbitrarily extradited to the mainland, blurring a line between the one country, two systems arrangement. One paper writing, this risked exposing Hong Kongers to unfair trials and violent treatment. They also argued the bill would give China greater influence over Hong Kong and could be used to target activists and journalists. Eventually this was withdrawn due to the protests, but China's a force. In May of last year, to put it simply, they enacted new laws that would help stamp out state subversion in Hong Kong under the guise of national security laws, these same laws that Jimmy Lai and the staff of Apple Daily have been charged under. The Apple Daily, of course, still running an edition in Taiwan. And that's all I really have to say on that story. That's where we are with that story at the moment. And in the last story, this may not be news to you, but this was news to me, and it brings a whole new meaning to the term sport fucking. This story started with the decision to give out the 160,000 condoms to Olympians at the Tokyo Olympics will now be given to them on their way home. What? They give out free condoms to Olympians? This only confirms what I've always wanted, that everybody is having sex around me, and that I also just want to now slip sex into every video that I do, if that's okay with you. You see, I thought the Olympic tally was for medals, but it's not. That's 42 condoms per Olympian. How much sex can one Olympian have in a 2-week span? Well, a lot, apparently, when you're an Olympian surrounded by Olympians. I also love how they think a gold medalist will sit at an airport and then sit on a plane and still get home and have 42 condoms. Bro Greer, a US javelin thrower, bragged to ESPN after the Sydney 2000 games about sleeping with some girl in an airplane bathroom, and he tells this story about accidentally hitting the flight attendant assistant button. And I promised myself I wouldn't make any dick javelin jokes in that. It was difficult. In London 2012, Hope Solo, a US soccer player, said that people were having sex on the grass between buildings. People are getting down and dirty. They're a fuckfest. I didn't know, but it makes so much sense. US swimmer Ryan Lochte said that this is about 70 to 75% of Olympians. And when you look into it, this whole condom thing started with the 1988 Seoul Games, where it actually led to Olympic organizers finding their free condoms on the roofs of the athletes' village, which drove an official Olympic ban on outdoor sex by the Olympic Association. We weren't prepared here in Sydney either. 70,000 condoms wasn't enough, prompting a second order of 20,000 and a new standing order of 100,000 condoms per Olympics. We upped the game. And Tinder didn't help things either. Even in the dead of winter, At the 2014 Sochi Games, US snowboarder Jamie Anderson said that Tinder in the Olympic Village is next level. And she said, "I can't wait to go out with all my girlfriends and dance." And don't we all? Anyway, that's the end of that. And that's the end of the show. So, any comments, anything you want to say about the kirpan, or if you're an Olympian, drop me a comment below. Maybe drop me a mention. Subscribe, like, and probably a new video sometime this week, maybe Friday, hopefully. And stick around for that. Till next time.